Welcome to the ICK Kids Spotlight series.
We'll be joined by world-leading coaches, researchers and practitioners sharing their expert insights.
All of these insights are to help us in our mission to champion sport policy, education and practice that puts kids first.
Be sure to join us at icoachkids.org to learn, coach and connect.
So let's dive in.
Dr. Annette Stride, thank you so much for coming on to the iCoach Kids Spotlight series. We're very excited to have you with us today, and so thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So we're here today to talk about the third item from the iCoach Kids Pledge, which is to be inclusive. And we'd really like to specifically dive into the role that sport and coaches play in supporting greater inclusivity and diversity. And so just to start us off, what's inspired you to delve into this important research area?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks, Megan. I think in terms of inclusion, and I'm thinking of my own practice and also the fact that it is a key focus of my research, really stems from some very early experiences of not feeling included myself in some sports growing up, whether that be in a sporting context or PE. And that was really to do with my gender. I've got a really clear memory of constantly asking my PE teacher when I was at school, please can I go and play football with the boys? You know, I don't want to play netball again. And I think she must have just got fed up with me asking every week, because one week I was suddenly allowed to go. And I don't really remember anything about the game other than that there were lots of boys huddled around a ball all of the time and I never touched it. And then all of a sudden in the last minute, it kind of bobbled out of this mass. I latched onto it and sort of toe poked to goal home. And I remember turning around thinking all these boys are going to, swallow me up and cheer with me and celebrate. And all they did was run around the goalkeeper and laughed at him for letting a goal in by a girl. And so I'm like, oh, it doesn't normally work like this. And then to make matters worse, the goalkeeper was one of my best mates. We sort of shared a desk in class. He didn't talk to me for a week. The teachers wondered what on earth was going on. And I just didn't really understand what the issue was at the time. I didn't have a language to sort of begin to make sense of it. And those kinds of experiences happened in other spheres of my life as well. I was always asked, why didn't I wear dresses? Why was I always wearing trousers? Why didn't I play with dolls? Why did I race around the woods on my bike? So I think I just became aware from a really early age that girls and boys were treated differently, but I didn't know why. I just didn't have the language for that. So for me, I think those experiences have just resonated with me, and I've continued to become more and more aware of I suppose discrimination around gender, but I've also been able to sort of bridge that gap and recognise that it isn't exclusive to gender. It happens for lots of reasons to lots of different types of people. And I think for those reasons, that's why I try to be an inclusive practitioner, and research-wise, inclusion is very much at the heart of what I do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story, because I think that will resonate with lots of listeners, including me. So it was really nice to hear that. So I think it might be useful to start by asking what we mean by these terms, so diversity and inclusivity, and how they relate. So can you just tell us the difference between equality and equity?
Yeah. Again, it's a great question, because I know a lot of people use these terms interchangeably. So for me, equality is about treating everybody equally. And that means for some people, it's about treating people the same. And if we were all the same, that would work. But we're all different. We all start at a different point. We come with different experiences and skill sets. And so equality doesn't necessarily work. If I give an example, I teach a module to first year PE students where I do a block of swimming with them. And in any given seminar group, I have 20 students. They all come with very different experiences of swimming. I have some county swimmers. I have some people who've never swum before. They've got through the whole of school without learning to swim. I have some people who can swim and are scared of water. I have some that have had a handful of lessons in school, and I've had some that, you know, enjoy swimming and do it regularly with friends and family. So in any given class, I've got this really broad continuum of strong swimmers to, you know, non-swimmers. So if I was treating them equally, I'd be giving them the same flotation devices, the same practices. And what would happen there is obviously the county swimmers would get bored because they'd find it too easy, and the non-swimmers would be floundering literally in the shallow end of the pool, not getting very far. So, you know, equity for me is recognising that all of those swimmers are coming in from a different, they're at a different place, and that's because of the experiences they've had of swimming in the past. So it's about recognising that they all have different needs, taking those needs into consideration and making adjustments for them so they can all achieve, and this is something I think I'm going to come back to in this interview, they can all achieve success, or they will all get closer to the experience of achieving success. So equity is about levelling up the playing field for me and making things a little bit fairer for people. And I think related to this notion of equity and equality is diversity and inclusion. So again, it's about difference. Diversity for me is about recognising we're all different and that's a good thing. And I think a lot of the time people are a little bit cautious of folk that they think are different to them. And this can sometimes almost be quite extreme and they're fearful of them. So it could be on the grounds of example, someone having a disability or someone belonging to a different religious group than yourself. But for me, those differences are really, really important, and they really become important when you're working with other people. And this could be working in a group as part of a project at university. It could be being part of a team in a sporting context. It could be part of a group in a work context. And the reason I say it's really important to have different people is research has consistently shown us that when you embrace diversity, when you celebrate it in all its forms, whether that be an organisation or an individual or a team celebrating it, it can bring in a whole host of benefits. Because what you're doing is you're getting these people from different backgrounds with different experiences and different skill sets to bring different ways of thinking to a situation. So a diverse group can be more creative in its problem solving. It can be more innovative. It can lead to a more enterprising group. So for me, I think embracing diversity and recognizing those strengths means that you create a more inclusive environment. So that's how I link diversity and inclusion. And when people are in an inclusive environment, they feel safe, they feel supported, they feel valued. And I'm talking from personal experience now, that makes you feel a lot more confident in expressing yourself. So it could be expressing your thoughts and opinions, but it also could be about thinking, do you know what, I am going to give this coaching practice a go. And so therefore you might be helping someone develop their skill set. So just to sort of summarize, I think for you, inclusivity is about making people feel valued. And I think long term, it can enhance the productivity, the effectiveness of a group. And it also ensures people then still want to belong to that group. They'll keep coming back to that group, whether that's a coaching situation or whether it's a work organisation, sort of context.
Great, amazing, thank you. So considering the work you've done in this area, both in youth sport and PE, what would your key messages be to coaches of children and young people?
Yeah, okay. There's a few. Let me try and keep it to 3. I think one of the most important for me is about making people feel welcome and valued, and a really important part of the team in your coaching setup. And it shouldn't just be about ability, because if you only make it about ability, you're only going to sort of speak to a very small handful of the most able in that context. Everybody else will just think they're less important, less meaningful to the success of the session. So when I'm coaching, I like to make everybody feel like they'll be missed if they don't come to that session for lots of different reasons, and they have a really important role to play in its success. And I don't want to do that in a way where they think, oh, I've got to turn up, but in a way that they just sort of feel that regardless of their technical and tactical abilities, their presence is really, it's needed for lots of different reasons. I think that's the first message. The second message, and I said I'd come back to this notion of success and challenge. I've been really fortunate in my career to work with Pam Stevenson, who is one of the authors of The Inclusion Spectrum, and her mantra wherever I go is about success and challenge. So to ensure that your participants feel successful and challenged, you've got to get to know them as individuals rather than a group. What can they do, and what are they unable to do, and how can you adapt your session to make sure that all of them experience success, but in a way that isn't easily achieved? In other words, they are challenged. So one of the aspects of the inclusion spectrum is the STEP acronym. And that helps coaches, I think, get them to recognise they can make some really simple changes to their practice, which will enable everybody to feel included in that session and feel like they are having some measure of success. And again, if I can go back to the example of my swimming with the first year students, if I applied STEP to that, so for those of people who do not know what STEP is, it's space, task, equipment, and people. So in terms of space, I'll be asking the students, where do they feel comfortable putting themselves in the pool? You know, don't presume that someone who can swim is happy out of their depth. They might still have some fear issues and want to be in the shallow end. It could also be about the distances that I'm asking swimmers to swim. I might adapt that for the more able and give the less able a lesser distance to swim. In terms of task, it's about keeping the activity simple and then making them progressively harder. So for someone who's not dived into the pool before, I might be getting them to do forward rolls or handstands, and then moving to a seated dive and then into a standing dive. In terms of equipment, it could be around flotation devices, for example, giving the non-swimmers more devices, asking the swimmers to perhaps swim without floats if we're doing kick-only exercises. And then in terms of people, it's about how you might organise your groups. So one of the things I do with swimmers is I sometimes pair them up, and I get them to analyse each of the strokes and then give each other corrective practices and feedback. I think a really common misconception with STEP is that it is for coaches who have people with disabilities in their group, and that, you know, I'd love for people to just get that out of their thinking and to recognise that STEP is a really important tool for absolutely everybody. In any coaching session, we've got this big range of abilities, and STEP helps you to make sure everybody's included in those. I think my third message is about just being a really adaptable and resourceful and versatile coach. Yes, have a session in mind that you want to run with your participants, but just be prepared that that might have to change at any given moment, and you might have to just rip it up. So some of my best sessions, I've gone along to a footballing session, I've gone with my session plan, I've expected 10 people to turn up, it's been a cold, windy Monday night and there's 3 people on the pitch. I'm like, right, I need to change things. And I think the reason I probably couldn't have done that 15 years ago or 20 years ago when I started out But, you know, over the last sort of 10, 15 years, I've accumulated that experience to have lots of ideas up here when I need them. And I think it's about observing other people coach. You know, I watch sport on the TV, whether it's football or whether it's the WNBA. I'm always looking at ideas for warm-ups, practices, set plays. How can I take something from basketball and put it into a football context? And I think it's also, when you've got that sort of bank of resources in your head, it's also about having the confidence just to try it out and not be fearful that you can, you know, if you try something out and it goes wrong, it's a disaster. It's much better, I think, to try something out and realize it didn't work and move on to something else than to just keep on producing the same old practices, because you as the coach will get bored and your participants will get bored. Can I give you one more key message that
Yeah,
I think it's really important? I think it's also, we've got to recognise the value of the young people that we work with and their expertise. And I think sometimes coaches could be in danger of sort of thinking, well, I know best, I've got this technical and tactical knowledge, and I am the sort of authority figure or the expert. But you are not the person that's on the receiving end of your coaching week in, week out. It's the young people that we're serving. So, you know, for me, it's about talking to those young people and finding out what they enjoy about your sessions. What do they feel you need to improve on? You know, and if you're that sort of coach that's always looking at getting better, then there's no better way than going to ask the participants that you serve. Because at the end of the day, I think we're never a finished product as a coach. We're always striving to be better. And, you know, consulting with your participants, for me, is a really great mechanism at helping you to do that.
Absolutely. So I'm a youth sports coach, and I think I could definitely learn from some of those. And I really like the STEP acronym, so that's something I'm going to take.
Oh, brilliant.
So thank you for those. So meeting the individual needs of our participants is of growing importance. And part of this is understanding the people in front of us, and not only their technical and tactical ability, but socially, culturally, and beyond. So what can coaches do to appreciate and celebrate these individual differences?
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely critical question, Megan, and you know, I'm glad that you've asked it. I think I've begun to allude to this a little bit in our previous discussion. For me, getting to know your participants is absolutely fundamental to creating an effective, inclusive environment. One that makes sure that each of your participants feels successful and challenged at the same time. One where they feel valued, but one that they value also. And one that will, for me, make them want to come back time and time again. And for that to occur, you've got to develop that coach-participant relationship and get to know your participants as individuals, not a mass group that's in front of you. It's about being observant, it's about talking to them, it's around noticing changes in behaviour when something might not be right, finding out what makes them tick, why are they here, why do they keep coming back, what do they want to get out of the session, and then there's other things. What have they had to overcome to get to your session? What's life like for them away from that coaching context? What support networks do they have, either at home or in the coaching session or at school? What's school like for them? Because it's such a big aspect of their life. What pressures might they be experiencing in other aspects of their life? So this might sound a bit odd because you're thinking, well, I'm just here to teach them how to kick a football or how to swim a length. But these young people don't see these different aspects of their life in isolation. You know, they bleed into each other. So if they're having some problems at school, that's going to be brought into the gym or the pool or the tennis court or wherever you're coaching, and it will influence the way they're behaving and they're reacting and they're responding to you and your coaching. So I think it's really important that you get to see your participants as individuals, and you move just away from just their physical and their skill sets to what's going on more broadly in their life. But I think it's a little bit more than that as well. It's also about you helping your participants to get to know each other and to appreciate and respect each other because of their differences, not regardless of their differences. So, for example, we know that cliques form in particular settings, and they can be so critical to creating an exclusive environment where some people feel like they don't belong. And that, for me, is where you as a coach can have a really crucial role in looking at why those cliques are forming, looking at why some people are on the fringes, and how can you make those people that are on the margins be brought into that session and be made to feel, again, included and valued and wanted. And I think coaches shouldn't underestimate their kind of ability to do something around that, but also their responsibility to make that session feel like it's one where you're not just coming to learn a skill, you're coming to be part of a bigger group.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so thank you so much for all your answers so far. And now it's time for our quick fire questions. So these are 3 questions that we ask all of our guests. And so the first one is, what is good coaching to you?
Yeah, so for me, good coaching is about getting every single participant wanting to come back to your session. For that to happen, the session's got to be fun, engaging, enjoyable, welcoming, successful. And as I've suggested earlier, what that means is that every single person in that session experiences some form of success, and that might not necessarily equate to the success of the group, but creating an environment where every individual has their own unique set of goals and they're making progress towards those goals. Again, you're not going to know that until you get to know your participants. So it's about talking and observing, and also recognizing that these goals might not be about getting faster and stronger and quicker and higher. It has to consider beyond the physical. So for some young people, just getting to the session might be a goal, or to attend 2 sessions, in 2 weeks might be a huge achievement. Making new friends might be their motive for coming. So it's about finding that out. And I think it's also about offering a space that's safe and supportive, where young people feel like it's okay to give something a go and not succeed. It's okay to fail. There's no repercussions if you fail. We're going to keep on giving it a go until we get there. So I think for that to happen, you've got to create an environment where those young people feel they've got a space to look back and reflect on why they didn't succeed first time round, and then not be scared to give it another chance. And I think when they do succeed, it's about you celebrating with them. And it's lovely when a child swims a width for the first time, because I'll be jumping around on the pool side and throwing my hands up in the air, and to see the joy on their face to do something they didn't think was possible. I think that's the reason why a lot of people get into coaching. But you've got to remember just to keep on celebrating those really small achievements all of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so question number 2. What is one thing you would change about youth sport to make the experience better for kids?
Yeah, I think this one's a difficult question to answer, purely because I feel like I'd be making a judgment about all contexts that come under youth sport. And I think if I was to suggest changes, I might then be in danger of not recognising some really excellent practice that does go on in youth sport contexts. If I'm being pinned down to give some sort of answer, I think for me, it would just be about making sure that all young people get a wider variety of sports and physical activities to experience. And that for many of them is going to take place in school, because that's the only opportunity they have to be active. That's where the resources are, or there's time put aside. And so if it is going to take place in school, for me, it's about moving away from a really narrow curriculum. And I know not all schools have a narrow curriculum. There's some excellent schools out there, but moving away from a narrow curriculum where there's a heavy emphasis on competitive team games, or any activities that perhaps have very little meaning for particular young people, and trying to offer a real diet of activities, that a broad diet of activities that they are more likely to be engaged in as they sort of go through the life course.
Fantastic. And last question. What is the biggest difference in sport and coaching now compared to when you first got involved in it?
Okay, this is a lovely question, because I feel like I'm coming back full circle to the first question that you asked me. I think the biggest difference for me is seeing the opportunities that have opened up to a broader range of young people. And I think in part this is because people are beginning to think differently. The sort of expectations and assumptions about particular activities only being suitable for particular types of young people seems to be challenged a lot more. And the obvious one is football for girls and women. And I think it's really healthy for us to be seeing more women playing football on the TV now, because it's opening up new audiences. It's sort of challenging boys and girls from a younger age to think differently about what they can and can't do. And I think similarly, events like the Paralympics being televised on mainstream channels, they've really brought, a platform for us to begin to challenge assumptions and stereotypes about what disabled people can and can't do. And again, I think it's great, it's a great opportunity for, young disabled people to see role models that they can associate with and make them dream and aspire to be involved in sport at whatever level. We're having more and more debates about transgender inclusion in sport. We're seeing more athletes from LGBTQ plus communities coming out without worrying about the repercussions from teammates and managers and sponsors. And so I think collectively, all of these are examples of a climate that's being created where it's okay to be, different. And sport isn't being seen anymore as this domain for very particular identities, white, middle class, cisgender, non-disabled, I can go on. We see in sport and physical activity as being a context that everyone should be able to access and enjoy.
Yeah, fantastic. So this has been such a great conversation. And how can listeners find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, I think the best way for people to get hold of me if they want to learn a little bit more is just to drop me an email. I am on Twitter. And it's at Dr. Annette Stride. I'm probably not one of the most prolific people on social media, I'll be honest. I'm perhaps a little bit old school. I'm much happier if people, I'm more than happy to have conversations with anyone about diversity and equity. But if they want to know more, if they want more help or support, then to just drop me an email and or pick up the phone and we'll take it from there.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, Annette. It was really great to talk to you today. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me.